To please his wife, he humiliated his mother and discovered something that changed his attitude forever. Kofi Mensah's mansion gleamed like a precious gem against Accra's evening sky. Golden lights from East Legon reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows where sophisticated laughter echoed throughout the modern living room. 3 European investors in flawless suits and Swiss timepieces sipped French champagne while admiring the contemporary decor that skillfully blended African art with carefully curated modern touches. Henrik, the silver-haired Danish director, declared with admiration, "Mr. Mensah, your home is absolutely stunning. One can truly sense your successful integration into the global economy." Kofi smiled confidently, adjusting his Hermes tie, embodying Ghana's new elite at 35 as commercial director of a multinational corporation, though beneath his assured exterior, familiar tension knotted his stomach. Efua appeared in the doorway, breathtaking in her black evening gown, a formidable lawyer from Accra's aristocracy who had mastered the art of charming foreign investors, her gold jewelry sparkling with each calculated gesture as she announced with a perfect smile, "Gentlemen, dinner is served." In the kitchen, Abena quietly dried her hands on her colorful kente cloth. This 58-year-old woman with tired yet dignified features, having spent the entire afternoon preparing Ghana's finest specialties, including fragrant jollof rice, grilled spiced fish, and crispy kelewel, wanting her son to shine before these important men, just as she had always done since finding him at Makola Market as a 3-year-old orphan she raised alone. The aromas of ginger and red pepper filled the house, an intoxicating blend, contrasting sharply with the salon's muted atmosphere. Efua whispered urgently, pulling Kofi aside, her manicured nails digging into his arm. "This woman must not appear before our guests. You understand what this represents for our image," though Kofi started to protest. "But Efua, she's my—" Efua cut him off decisively. "If anyone asks who she is, you say she's our cook. End of discussion." Erdun, her gaze brooked no argument, while Kofi felt his throat tighten. Memories echoing from Makola Market, where Abena sold wax fabrics under the burning sun, saving every cedi for his education, sleeping on a mat so he could have a mattress. The dinner proceeded in refined ambience, with enthusiastic European investors repeatedly complimenting the cuisine with extraordinary exclamations, until Henrik raised his white wine glass, saying, "This cuisine is absolutely delicious, Kofi. Could you please congratulate your chef for us? We would love to meet him." Heavy silence fell over the table as Efua shot her husband a sharp look, while Kofi felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning, glimpsing Abena through the kitchen door crack, waiting, with eyes full of hope and pride. "Of course," he finally stammered, rising as each step toward the kitchen resonated like a funeral gong in his conscience, while Abena approached radiantly, smoothing her kente with trembling hands of emotion. "Gentlemen," Kofi declared in a voice he didn't recognize, "here is our cook." The word fell like a stone into a well, as Abena froze, her smile slowly hardening, while her usually warm eyes became 2 lakes of silent pain, inclining her head slightly toward the guests with a barely audible, "Good evening, gentlemen." Henrik exclaimed enthusiastically, "Fantastic! Our compliments, madam, you cook divinely." As Abena nodded without looking at Kofi, stepped back and disappeared into the kitchen, the discreet door click resonating like a slap. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur, with Kofi laughing at jokes, shaking hands, signing contracts while his heart bled, constantly seeing Abena's broken gaze, this woman who had sacrificed everything to make him the man he had become. Efua radiated satisfaction, her rings sparkling as she toasted their business success. And when guests finally departed, Kofi went to the kitchen, finding it spotless, with every utensil stored and every surface cleaned. Abena having left through the service door as she had come. That night Kofi couldn't sleep as spice fragrances still floated through the house, an obsessive reminder of his cowardly act. and by morning he could no longer bear the weight of his guilt. The next morning, when Kofi went to Abena's house to apologize, he discovered it was empty, as she had disappeared without a trace. Akra's sun already beat down hard at 8 in the morning when Kofi parked his BMW in Nima's narrow streets, the contrast hitting him like a slap. Since yesterday evening he moved through East Legon's plush salons, and here he found his childhood universe that Efua so despised. Merchants' cries resonated in Twi through the humid air, shouting "Koko Aba! Koko Aba!" for the steaming millet porridge that Mama Akosua had sold for 30 years, while aromas of grilled fish and plantain bananas mixed with black soap and incense scents. Kofi closed his eyes momentarily, overwhelmed by memories of these dusty alleys where children ran barefoot between soapy puddles, where Abena had raised him with fierce tenderness, rising at 4 o'clock to prepare millet cakes, mending his school uniforms until threadbare, saving every pesewa for his notebooks. Kwaku's warm voice pulled him from his thoughts. His former neighbor turned taxi driver, observing him curiously. "Kofi, what brings you to the neighborhood?" When Kofi explained he was looking for Mama Abena, Kwaku's face darkened. "Ah, my brother. She came last night very sad with red eyes, like when your father Kwame died. Yah welcomed her." Kofi's heart tightened, knowing if Abena had taken refuge anywhere, it would be with Yah Asantewa, the neighborhood seamstress, a strong-willed 45-year-old widow who ran a small workshop where women gathered to sew and support each other. Crossing the market, Kofi met several vendors' disapproving glances who knew the news traveled faster than rumors in popular neighborhoods, his three-piece suit and Italian shoes marking him as a stranger, though he had grown up here. Year's workshop occupied a small, colorful space decorated with vibrant wax fabrics, featuring blue peacocks, green palm leaves, orange spirals, telling Akan people's history while sewing machine sounds, created familiar melody, punctuated by Twi conversations and laughter. "Yah, it's Kofi!" he called from the threshold. As silence fell instantly, with 5 women looking up from their work, gazes oscillating between curiosity and judgment, while Yah appeared imposing in her large indigo boo-boo, hands on hips, demanding, "You have nerve coming here after what you did to that woman." Kofi lowered his head, admitting, "I know, Yah. I just want to talk to her, ask forgiveness." But Yah recited in Akan before translating to emphasize her anger. "Our ancestors said if you don't respect your mother, you respect nothing, Kofi. Did you forget this in your fancy neighborhoods?" At the workshop's back, a familiar silhouette bent over a sewing machine as Abena mechanically sewed red and gold fabric, shoulders bent by grief, graying hair usually carefully braided, covered by a simple headscarf. "Mama," Kofi murmured as she didn't look up, continuing to sew with precise but trembling gestures while a tear fell on the colorful fabric. Kofi approached slowly, each step weighing like lead, while around them other women resumed sewing. The atmosphere remained tense, these women knowing solidarity in hardship, mutual aid when men abandon, collective strength facing adversity. "I came to get you, Mama. Come home," he pleaded, but Abena's voice was barely audible, asking, "What home? You told everyone I was your cook, your wife one. I'm nobody to you anymore." His phone vibrated with Afua's message threatening, "If you continue looking for that woman, I'm taking my things and going to my parents with our son. Choose wisely, Kofi." He put away his phone abruptly, while around him wax fabrics told stories of love, family, tradition, and wall photos showed generations of strong women, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, united by indestructible bonds. "Mama, look at me," he begged, as Abena stopped sewing, hands trembling on blood-red fabric, color of sacrifice, color of spurned maternal love. Minutes stretched in the small workshop's silence, cradled by distant machine humming and market cries, while incense scent mixed with new fabric perfumes created an almost sacred atmosphere. Abena finally raised her eyes to her son and murmured, "It's time you knew the truth, Kofi. You're not my biological son." Leaden silence fell over the sewing workshop as machines ceased their familiar humming. 5 women present exchanging worried glances, sensing the weight of the revelation that had just fallen, while Ya made a discreet hand gesture, and all left silently, leaving Abena and Kofi alone in the workshop's colorful intimacy. "What are you saying, Mama?" Kofi stammered, legs giving way beneath him as Abena delicately set down her work, trembling hands smoothing red and gold fabric, while her tear-swollen eyes fixed on an invisible point beyond the wax-decorated walls. "It was 30 years ago, my son. I was 28, working as a vendor at the Great Makola market." Her voice soft but charged with emotion contained for decades. "That morning, I was going to Kolbu Hospital to see my sister Amma, who had just given birth." Kofi knelt before her, wrinkled suit contrasting with the place's simplicity, while around them, wax fabrics with traditional motifs seemed silent witnesses to this confession. "In front of the main entrance, near the great mahogany trees, I heard a newborn's cries." Abena closed her eyes, reliving that morning that changed her life. "You were there, my little one, wrapped in a white and gold akan cloth, abandoned on a wooden bench. You couldn't have been more than a few days old." Her hands instinctively searched for something in her bodice, pulling out a small, worn leather pouch she always kept near her heart. "You wore this around your neck," she said, revealing a strikingly beautiful gold necklace of extraordinary craftsmanship, featuring time-patinated gold engraved with remarkably precise akan symbols, intertwined spirals, symbols of strength and nobility, motifs evoking Ashanti royalty, with a central pendant representing the adinkra of the Nyame Dua tree, God's tree, symbol of divine protection. "There was also this," Abena murmured, producing fragments of a letter yellowed by years as Kofi examined the paper pieces, with elegant writing partially destroyed by humidity, still deciphering a few words in Akan, meaning, "My child, Adoma, life. I searched everywhere for your parents, Kofi, questioned nurses, guards, other patients. Nobody knew where you came from." Abena tenderly caressed her adoptive son's face. "And then, when I took you in my arms, you stopped crying, looked at me with those trusting eyes as if you knew I would take care of you." Kofi felt tears flowing down his cheeks as everything took new meaning, including Abena's unconditional love, her incessant sacrifices, her patience facing all his teenage anger. "But Kwaku, your fiancé?" he asked, as Abena smiled sadly. "Kwaku wanted children quickly after our marriage. When I told him I wanted to raise you as my own son, he laughed, said he wouldn't feed another's child. So I chose you, Kofi." This revelation struck Kofi like a sledgehammer blow, knowing Abena had sacrificed her conjugal happiness, her chance for a traditional family, for an abandoned newborn she didn't even know. "Mama, forgive me for shaming you last night. You gave everything for me. And I." He took her calloused hands that had worked so hard for him while Abena replied, "You became a remarkable man, educated, respected, prosperous. I succeeded, but I failed to transmit respect for your roots." Memories flooded Kofi's mind of Abena selling fabrics in the rain, mending his clothes by kerosene lamplight, depriving herself of meals to pay for his school books. All those nights she returned exhausted from the market, yet still helped with homework. "I never regretted my choice, Kofi. Not 1 second. You're the most beautiful gift Nyame, God, offered me." And at that moment, Ya poked her head through the door, saying, "Excuse me, but this necklace, I've seen these symbols somewhere before." Examining the jewelry closely, eyes widening progressively as she exclaimed in Akan, "It's the Adoma coat of arms, a very influential merchant family in the 1990s who owned several businesses in Kumasi and Accra. Very wealthy, but they all mysteriously disappeared 30 years ago. Nobody ever knew what happened to them." Kofi's heart beat so loudly it echoed in his ears, thinking of a wealthy family, royal symbols, his abandonment date perfectly corresponding. "I need to know more," he murmured, while outside, a black car with tinted windows had been parked for an hour with Efua inside, observing the workshop through binoculars, her face distorted by anger and worry, having followed her husband and witnessed the entire scene through the half-open window. Kofi and Abena left the workshop, heading to the Great Makola market for an appointment with Nana Ose, the jewelry dean, who knew the history of all Accra's ancient jewelry. The old man sitting behind his display of gold necklaces and bracelets, adjusting his glasses when Kofi handed him the ancestral necklace, examining it thoroughly under his magnifying glass, turning each detail until his face suddenly paled, hands trembling as he whispered, "My God, this necklace belongs to the Adoma family, but they disappeared 30 years ago under very strange circumstances." The University of Ghana at Legon buzzed with usual late afternoon activity when Kofi pushed open Professor Asante Boateng's office door, a historian specializing in Ashanti royal families. The 70-year-old man looking up from his ancient manuscripts with tired eyes. "The Adoma," he repeated slowly after Kofi explained his quest. "That's a name I hadn't heard in a long time." Moving toward his archives, pulling out heavy, dusty files while his office walls were lined with ancient Ashanti kingdom maps, black and white photos of traditional chiefs, and reproductions of Adinkra symbols. The Adoma family was one of the most influential commercial lineages of the Ashanti kingdom, he explained, spreading yellow documents on his desk. Direct descendants of the royal court of Kumasi, they controlled gold and cocoa trade between Ashanti and coastal ports since the 19th century. Kofi examined photographs showing elegantly dressed men and women in royal kente, wearing massive gold jewelry similar to what he wore around his neck. In the 1990s, their commercial empire was worth several million cedis. They owned plantations, mines, import-export businesses. The professor pointed to a photo of a radiant young woman. "Here's Nana Adoma, the last heir of the lineage. Beautiful, intelligent, promised a great future." Kofi's heart raced as this woman had his eyes, his nose shape, something indefinable in her expression. "What happened to her?" he asked as the professor lowered his voice. "In 1994, her uncles wanted to force her into marriage with a very old Nigerian businessman to consolidate their commercial relations. Nana Adoma refused. She was pregnant by a man she truly loved. A young university professor, her uncles threatened and confined her, so she fled. And then," Kofi pressed as the professor replied, "never heard from again. Her uncles declared her dead, recovered the entire inheritance, but some say she gave birth somewhere before," leaving his sentence unfinished. Kofi felt his legs trembling as everything matched, including dates, hospital abandonment, royal necklace, making him the son of Nana Adoma, legitimate heir to a fortune stolen for 30 years. "Professor, legally, if her child had survived," Kofi began as the professor answered, "he would be the sole legitimate heir to the entire Adoma empire. Several million cedis probably. The uncles were only temporary managers in the absence of a direct heir." Leaving the university, Kofi's head spun as he instinctively headed toward Nima Primary School where Abena worked, needing calm reflection away from his businessman life's agitation. He found her in the school's small garden, watering tomato plants the children cultivated, wearing a simple blue and white wax dress, hair simply braided with no jewelry or artifice, just natural beauty of a woman who dedicated her life to loving and serving. "Mama," he murmured, approaching as she looked up surprised but happy to see him. "Kofi, what brings you here?" "I discovered who my biological parents were. I'm heir to a great fortune, Mama. Several millions," he said, sitting beside her on the small wooden bench while Abena continued watering her plants calmly. "So what? Does that change who you are today?" This simplicity, natural wisdom overwhelmed him as while he agitated around inheritance and wealth questions. She remained focused on essentials, including growing tomatoes to feed children. "Sit beside me, my son," she said as Kofi obeyed, resting his head on Abena's shoulder like he did as a child. while she began humming a sweet melody in Akan, a lullaby she sang to put him to sleep. "Your mama loves you, your mama loves you, my child, my child." Tears flowed down Kofi's cheeks, as in this modest garden, surrounded by playing children's laughter, he understood true wealth was there, in this unconditional love Abina had given him for 30 years. "You know, Mama, with this inheritance, I could change everything, lift you from poverty, offer you a beautiful house," he suggested. But Abena replied, "Kofi, look around you," gesturing to children running in the courtyard. "These little ones go hungry some evenings. Their parents don't have money for school books. If Nyame gave you this fortune, maybe it's to help those who truly need it." His phone rang with Efua calling urgently. "Kofi, where are you? We need to talk. Come home immediately." As he hung up, worried by his wife's different tone, a calculated urgency he didn't recognize. "I must go, Mama," he said while she reminded him. "Remember the song, my son. Whatever happens." Arriving home, Kofi found the house unusually quiet with Efua waiting in his office, but something had changed as she had traded her usual arrogance for an almost humble attitude. "Darling, I've thought a lot since yesterday," she approached, caressing his cheek with unusual tenderness. "I was unfair to your mother." Eager Kofi regarded her suspiciously, asking, "What are you saying?" As she continued, "I know you found her. I also know what you discovered about your biological family. You're rich, Kofi. Very rich." Her smile widening while he understood instantly that she had spied on everything, calculated everything, cupidity shining in her eyes like gold. Efua entered Kofi's office with a calculating smile, saying, "Darling, I've been thinking, perhaps we should invite your mother to dinner. It's time to make amends." The next afternoon, lawyer Kwame Osei solemnly placed official documents on Kofi's desk with government seals and notary stamps, leaving no doubt that he was indeed the legitimate heir to the Adoma commercial empire, including 3.5 million cedis, properties in Kumasi and Accra, shares in mining companies, a fortune instantly propelling him into Ghana's economic elite. "Congratulations, Mr. Mensah, or should I say, Mr. Adoma," the lawyer smiled. "Your adoptive uncles will have to account for 30 years of fraudulent management. That's a lot of misappropriated money." Kofi contemplated the papers without joy, as this sudden wealth made him dizzy, but also strangely bitter, thinking of Abina watering her tomatoes in the school garden, happy with so little. His phone vibrated with Efua's message. "My darling, I have a wonderful surprise for you tonight. I invited Abena to dinner. We must celebrate our family reconciliation." Cold sweat ran down Kofi's back, knowing Efua inviting Abena meant the same woman who had publicly humiliated her 3 days earlier. He smelled a trap. That evening, the East Legon villa shone brilliantly as Efua had brought out the wedding china, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, wearing her finest dress and most sparkling diamonds when Abena arrived by taxi. Simply dressed in a blue and white Akan cloth, the contrast was striking. "Mama Abena," Efua exclaimed with theatrical warmth, "how happy I am to see you again." Kissing her on both cheeks, a gesture she had never made in 5 years of marriage, while Abena, troubled, accepted the embrace with natural politeness of women of her generation. "Please sit down." Efua indicated the place of honor usually reserved for the most important guests. "Kofi told me everything about your maternal sacrifice. I'm deeply moved." Kofi observed the scene with a mixture of disgust and fascination as Efua played her role perfectly with tender looks, benevolent smiles, attentive gestures, but he now knew her true nature. "Efua, stop this comedy," he said suddenly as she batted her eyelashes innocently. "I don't understand, darling. You spied on everything. You know about the Adoma inheritance. That's why you're inviting Mama Abena, isn't it?" He confronted her, while Efua's mask wavered briefly before she recovered quickly. "Kofi, I really don't see what you're talking about. I simply want to reconcile with your mother." "Nah, my mother," he exploded. 3 days ago, you refused to let her set foot in our house. You made her present herself as a domestic. Abena trembled in her chair, hands gripping her worn leather bag, unaccustomed to these raised voices, this electric tension saturating the air-conditioned villa. Evua realized her strategy was failing as her face hardened, finally revealing her true personality. So what? She threw coldly, "Things change, Kofi. You're rich now, very rich. One must know how to adapt." "Adapt?" Kofi stood up, hands trembling with anger. "You call that adapting?" As Efua hissed. "Listen to me carefully. Do you think I married you for your charm, for your beautiful eyes?" Laughing icily. "I married you because you were promising, ambitious, could offer me social standing. And now with these millions—" "Continue," Kofi murmured, voice white with rage as she explained. "Now you can offer me much more. We can travel, buy a house in Europe, enroll our son in the best Swiss schools," eyes shining with cupidity. "And this woman can finally be useful to us. A beautiful family story for the newspapers, the recognized adoptive mother, perfect image of a united family." Abena stood slowly, gathering her dignity like folding a cloth. "I think it's better if I leave," she murmured, as Kofi gently took her arm. "No, Mama, she's the one leaving." He turned to Efua, looking at her as if seeing her for the first time. This woman he thought he loved, who had shared his bed for 5 years, was just a greedy and calculating stranger. "You never loved the man I truly was," he said with painful clarity. "You loved my bank account, my social position, the image I projected." "So what? That's modern love, Kofi." Efua shrugged. "Feelings are for fairy tales, we're adults." "Perhaps, but I was lucky to be raised by a woman who taught me the true value of love." Kofi took Abena's hand in his. "This woman loved me without knowing who I was, where I came from, what I could bring her. She loved me because I was her son, period." Abena wept silently, touched by these words she never hoped to hear again. "Mama Abena," Kofi declared loudly, looking straight into Efua's eyes, "you are my real mother, the only one who counts, the one who raised me, transmitted values to me, made me the man I am." Efua smiled wickedly. "Very touching, but don't forget, Kofi, we have a son together. You can't push me aside like that." "You're right." Kofi looked at her with cold determination. "That's why I'll be generous with child support, but our marriage is over." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision that would change his life forever. Kofi made a decision that would change his life forever, saying, "Efua, I'm filing for divorce. And you, Mama Abena, would you accept being the honorary director of my new foundation?" 6 months later, the Accra courthouse resonated with the sharp bang of the judge's gavel declaring, "Divorce granted. The husband will pay child support of 1,000 cedis per month." Efua exploded. 1,000 cedis? You're joking. My ex-husband owns millions. I demand at least 10,000 cedis per month plus a house in East Legon. Her lawyer tried to calm her, but she continued her tirade before the stunned court. "I sacrificed 5 years of my life for this man. I have the right to my share of this fortune." The judge looked at her with disgust, saying, "Madam, your greed is indecent. The decision is made." Outside the courthouse, Kofi shook Abena's hand, radiant in her white and gold boo-boo made by Yah, 6 months of legal procedures having finally established his definitive rights to the Adoma inheritance. But above all, they had allowed their relationship to rebuild on authentic foundations. "Mama, are you ready for the great ceremony?" he asked tenderly as she replied, "As ready as a simple market woman can be to meet a traditional chief." 3 days later, under the great mahogany trees of the Kumasi royal palace, the Asantehene, king of the Ashanti, presided over an exceptional ceremony with hundreds of people in traditional multicolored kente costumes gathered to witness Kofi Adoma's official recognition and tribute to the 2 women who had marked his life. The atumpan drums resonated in the air charged with incense and tropical flower perfumes, while the traditional chief, majestic in his royal cloth woven with gold, raised his hands adorned with ancestral bracelets. Kofi Adoma, descendant of our noble lineage, today we honor your birth mother, Nana Adoma, who gave her life to preserve you. He poured libation of schnapps on the red earth, but we also honor the one who raised you with love, Abena Mensa, who made you the man you became. Abena, moved to tears, received a golden bead necklace of honor, symbol of recognition for her maternal role, never having imagined that a simple Makola market vendor could one day be honored by the king of the Ashanti. According to our traditions, the chief continued, you now have two mothers, one of blood and one of heart. Both deserve our eternal respect. The crowd approved with acclamations and songs in Akan, while Kofi finally felt peace invading him, no longer having to choose between his origins, as he could honor his biological mother while celebrating the one who had loved him unconditionally. 2 weeks later, in the renovated premises of a former Nima school, the Abena Mensa Foundation for Education officially opened its doors with Abena in her simple but bright office, welcoming the first children of the scholarship program. Her photo alongside Kofi's proudly adorning the entrance wall with the mention, Honorary Director and Inspiration. Mama Abena, little 7-year-old Akoswa said, handing her a colorful drawing, my daddy says you were poor like us, but raised a rich and good man. Abena caressed the girl's braided hair, saying, my child, true wealth is the love we give and receive. Your daddy is right. I was poor in money but rich in hope. The following Saturday, Kofi and Abena walked hand in hand through the familiar alleys of Makola Market. But this time everything was different, as vendors greeted them with respect and affection, while Kofi wore not a 3-piece suit, but a simple blue and white wax ensemble identical to Abena's. You see that woman there? Abena pointed to a young mother selling plantain bananas with her baby tied to her back. She reminds me of myself 30 years ago, working hard to feed her child, dreaming he'll go to school, succeed. Could the foundation help her? Kofi asked as Abena replied, of course, my son, that's exactly why it exists. They stopped in front of the old stall where Abena sold her wax fabrics as a young man had taken over the location, displaying colorful cloths with traditional motifs. Madame Abena, Monsieur Kofi. He stood respectfully. I'm Kwame, son of your former neighbor, thanks to your foundation. My little sister can go to high school now. Thank you very much. Abena smiled, eyes sparkling with happiness, as at 68 she had finally found her place, respected, loved, useful to her community, while her adoptive son, having become one of Ghana's most influential men, proudly accompanied her through the streets of his childhood. Kofi, she murmured as they left the market at sunset. I have only one regret. What is it, Mama? He asked as she replied, not being able to tell your biological mother, Nana Adoma, how wonderful her son became. She would have been so proud. Kofi squeezed Abena's calloused hand in his, saying, she knows, Mama. Wherever she is, she knows. And she also knows she was right to entrust her greatest treasure to you. In the dusty streets of Accra, Kofi had learned that true wealth is not measured in cedis, but in unconditional love, and that real nobility resides not in royal blood, but in the greatness of heart of those who raise us with dignity. This story reminds us of a universal truth, that genuine love knows no social boundaries or class differences, as Kofi discovered that material wealth means nothing compared to the unconditional love of a mother who sacrificed everything for him, while Abena teaches us that nobility of heart always surpasses that of blood, and that dignity and resilience are life's true treasures, in a world often obsessed with appearance and social status. This African story invites us to return to essentials, including respecting those who truly love us and honoring the sacrifices of those who raised us with love. What city are you watching from? Comment down below.